and welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who may not know, and this may be your first time listening, Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens and learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes sense to us and relates to our lives. For the past few months, we've been reading through the Spirits book together and going through each question piece by piece and breaking it down so that we fully understand it, and so that later when we're studying more and we're studying other Spirits books, it makes more sense to us because we have this background knowledge already. Last week, we finished off talking about the part of which was titled Incarnation on Different Worlds. So we were talking about how spirits can live on different worlds. And this week, we're going to pick up with a section called Progressive Transmigration. Considering that this book was written in the 1800s, some of the language is really hard for us to understand, also because it was translated from other languages into English, so it makes some of the words hard to understand and we don't use those words. So transmigration, I looked it up, and the dictionary definition in any old dictionary, not in a Spiritist way, it says the transmigration is the movement of a soul into another body after death. And so transmigration, the word, it's related closely to reincarnation. So that's the basics of what it's meaning as a completely not Spiritist dictionary definition. But when we read on in the section, we'll understand what we're talking about in a Spiritist point of view. So let's get right to it. Question 189. From the first time it is formed, does a spirit enjoy the fullness of its faculties? The spirits answered, no. Like a human being, a spirit has its infancy. When they first come into being, spirits have no more than instinctive existence, possessing only the conscious of themselves and their actions. Their intelligence only develops little by little. So here the question was asking, right when spirits are first formed, when there's a spirit first becomes, do they already can enjoy all of its faculties, like knowledge and comprehension, and can you understand all this stuff? And the spirits answered that no, we don't automatically have all this intelligence and all this knowledge and be able to have all these faculties. But they're saying that just a spirit, it's just like a human. We start at infancy. It's just like when a baby is born here on earth. We know that at first it's just a baby. He doesn't know how to talk. He doesn't know anything that he wants besides to sleep or to eat. So we're very limited and very instinctive. And then little by little, the baby grows. So that's the same way for spirit. They're going to go through that progress of being a little baby and then gradually increasing their intelligence little by little. Question 190. What is the state of the soul during its first incarnation? The spirits answered, it resembles the state of infancy in corporeal life. Its intelligence is only beginning to unfold. It tries its hand at life. So here they were asking, how is the spirit or the soul, which is we defined earlier, that it's the spirit when it's incarnated in a physical body. And so what is it like during that first incarnation, that first time? And they say that it resembles the state of infancy. So it's like when a baby is born here and you spent a year, 2 learning how to talk, how to walk, how to do all those basic stuff. Well, the spirit spends their whole first incarnation doing that, getting the basics and just figuring a little bit stuff out, figuring how things work. So it's really, really at the beginning. Question 191. Are the souls of our primitives in a state of spiritual infancy? The spirits answered, it is a relative infancy, since they are already developed souls endowed with passions. So the question here is asking that, are the souls of our primitives, like when we humans first on earth, when they were cavemen and we were very primitive, is that kind of spiritual infancy? Is that the same thing? And the spirits answer that it is relative infancy, since they already show passion. So it's not right at the beginning because they still have some passions, but it's probably like 3 or 4 years old, not at 1. And then there's another part to this question, and it says, so do passions indicate developments? The spirits answered, developments, yes, but not perfection. They are a sign of activity and awareness of the self. In the very young soul, intelligence in life exists only in a seed-like state. So here the question was asking, so since they have passions, and that means they're a little bit ahead of just infancy, that means they're at 3-year-olds instead of 1-year-olds, how come, does that mean that they're developing because they have passions? And they said that yes, passions do mean that you're developing, but it does not mean perfection, because you can have negative passions as well. So that doesn't mean you're getting closer to perfection, but you are developing. And because they said that these are signs of activity, so you know yourself and you know what you want and what you like, so you're becoming more self-aware. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment, and he says, the life of a spirit as a whole follows the same phase as corporeal life. A spirit passes gradually from embryonic state to that of a childhood. Over a succession of periods, it arrives to the adult state, which is that of perfection, but with the difference that there is no decline or desertion in the corporeal life. Even though its life has a beginning, it will have no end. And from our point of view, it needs an enormous amount of time to pass from spirit infancy to complete development. Furthermore, its progress does not all occur on one globe only, but on several. The life of the spirit is thus comprised of a series of corporeal existences, such each providing an opportunity for progress in the same way that each corporeal existence is comprised of a series of days, which over the individual acquires great experience and knowledge. Nevertheless, just as in the human life there are fruitless days, likewise in the life of a spirit there are corporeal essences that yield no improvement because it does not know how to live them productively. So this was giving us a good comparison, showing us that the whole life of a spirit can be compared to one human life. The only difference that we have to keep in mind is that the spirit's never gonna die, but the corporeal body will, but the spirit's never gonna die. The spirit will always live on, but we know in a human life, the human eventually dies, the corporeal body. So they're saying that although when we're looking at a human life, like a baby, we're looking at, okay, you're 1 and you learn how to walk a little bit or crawl, and then you're 2 and then you can talk a little bit, and then you slowly develop, and this happens in years or days. But when we're talking about spirits, this happens over several incarnations. So you spend a whole incarnation just learning how to crawl. And then the next one, you may spend the whole incarnation just learning the basics of talking. So it takes a much longer time than just one human life. And also, so they keep reincarnating, and also on different globes, like they said here. It's not all going to be on just Earth. We're going to go to other places to help us learn. And here what also he said is that just like in human life, when there are days that we don't do anything and we don't get much done, there are also spirits have corporeal existences that also do the same thing, that they just kind of sit still and they don't do much, so they're also not progressing. But of course, for us, it might just be some days, but for a human life, it might just be some days. For our spirit, it might be lives after lives, existences after existences on corporeal worlds. Question 192. Through perfect conduct in this life, can we hurdle all the degrees and become pure spirits without having passed through intermediate ones? And the spirits answered, no, because what human imagine as perfection is actually very far from it. There are qualities neither known about nor comprehended. They may be as perfect as their nature permits, but it is not absolute perfection. It is like certain children who, no matter how precocious they might be, they still pass through the youth before arriving at maternity, or ailing individuals who must go through convalescences before recovering their health. Furthermore, spirits must advance in knowledge as well as in morality. If they have progressed in only one sense, they will have to do so in the other in order to reach the top of the ladder. Nevertheless, more individuals advance in their present life, the shorter and less painful their subsequent trials will be. So here the question was asking that in one life, in one corporeal life, can we just go through a whole bunch of trials and pass all of them and reach perfection? And without having to go through those little ones? And I said that no, because first, what we think as perfect, we think, oh, that person's perfect. They're actually really far from it, because we don't even have the intelligence to comprehend someone being so perfect. And also that even though we might be really smart, it's like they're saying here, like a child might be really smart and really like above intelligence for their grade, but they still have to pass through all those years until they're an adult. They can't just be a 5-year-old adult. So even though we might be at that level already, we still have to go through the little parts, the little steps in between to get there. We can't just jump from childhood to adult just because we think we're ready. Also, spirits must be both intelligently advanced and morally advanced. So just because they're really smart, they also have to be doing morally good things, because or else they're not at that level of perfection, because you need both of them. Or if someone's doing really morally advanced things, but they're not Einstein, they're not super intelligent, they still have to go back and learn all that stuff too. So it's equal. They have to have both of them to reach that level of perfection. So they do have to go through the little steps and make sure that they have all of these little things that compromise each section. And then there's a second part to this question, and it says, can humans in this life at least assure themselves of a less bitter future existence? The spirits answered, yes, of course. They can reduce the length and difficulties of the path. Only the neglect remains at a standstill. So, if we have all these trials that are coming ahead, but if we really try hard and we overcome a lot of trials and we're doing good, then maybe those trials that were coming, they'll be like, oh, it doesn't need to be so intense. Like they were saying that, like there's stories of how some people, they were supposed to be reincarnated. They were supposed to, at some point in this incarnation, they were supposed to lose both arms. And then how do you do anything without both arms? So then, when their life, they were pretty good. They didn't know that they were going to lose both arms when incarnated, but they were pretty good. And then, so they only lost a hand. So we see that, although we may see, oh, that's so unfair, he lost his hand, but he was supposed to lose both arms. But now he has both arms, and he's just missing one hand. So we can lessen these difficulties that we have to go through if we try hard now and do good. And then they say only the negligent, only the people who are refusing to try and do any better, they're just going to stand still, and they're not going to move anywhere, and they're going to be stuck doing that same thing over and over again until they progress. But if we're really trying hard, and if we want to do good and improve ourselves, then it will help our future trials. Question 193. During their new existence, can humans regress to a lower level than the one they have already reached? The spirits answered, in social position, yes. As a spirit, no. So the question here is saying, in new lives, can we regress to a lower level? So, and they're saying that social position wise, yes, we can go from being the Queen of England one incarnation, and then the next we're in a really poor place and we don't have the best lifestyle, especially compared to the one that we just had. So we can go down in social level, or maybe you were living in a huge mansion and then you go to living in middle class and going to public school. So you can go down, and also you can go up. Maybe you were living in really poor conditions, and now this incarnation you're being the Queen of England or something of that sort. But that can be for social position, but as a spirit, no. Spirits can't regress down levels. If we made it this far as a spirit, we're going to be there as a spirit. But in in society as humans that we can go down. Question 194. During a new incarnation, can the soul of a moral individual animate the body of a scoundrel? So I looked up what a scoundrel is, and it means a dishonest or very mean person in a kind of way. So the question is saying, in a new incarnation, can the soul, so we're talking about the spirit now, can the soul go to being a mean and dishonest and scoundrel person? And they said no, because the spirit cannot regress. So if you already have these good moral standards, that you've passed these trials and you already have that, and you already have some intelligence, you're never going to lose that because that's yours to keep. So although you may go down in a class position, you won't go down morally like that, because that would be your spirit changing, and that doesn't, it would be your spirit changing for the worst, and that doesn't happen. We can change for the better, but not for the worst. And then there's another part to this question, and it says, can the soul of a wicked individual become the soul of a moral one? And the spirit says, yes, if it repudiates, such would be a reward. So that's saying that we can go that way. We can be bad and then get good, but that means we have to deserve it. We're not just gonna, oh, let's make you good now. It's not gonna work like that. If we deserve it and if we're trying hard, then yeah, then we will improve and we will become moral. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment, and he says, the evolution of spirits is progressive and never regressive. They raise themselves gradually through the hierarchy and do not descend from the levels they have reached. In their different corporeal lives, they may descend as individuals, but not spirits. Thus, the soul of a powerful person may later animate a humble artisan, and vice versa, because positions among individuals are frequently the inverse of the elevation of their morality. Herod was a king. Jesus was a carpenter. So what they're saying here, which was a really good explanation, is that the spirit itself is only going to progress. We're never going to go backwards. But as humans, as individuals on Earth, our position may change, because our position doesn't actually matter how good we are or not. Like they were at this end, they said Herod was a king who did, and we know that throughout history, kings have been corrupt and they start wars and they've done all this stuff. But Jesus, he was a carpenter. He was simple. He was, if we were thinking about it, he was at the top of the spirit hierarchy, but as an individual social position, he was almost at the bottom. So that doesn't matter. And usually, how high up you are, like if you have a lot of money and you're, like we said, like the queen or something, then those people usually have harder trials and they're harder to go through, because there's so much that goes through with having so much money and having all these people corrupt around you. So usually if you're more simple, it's easier to develop these moral skills. So we will go back and forth in social positions, but not as an actual spirit. Question 195. Mightn't the possibility of improving oneself in another existence lead some person to persevere on the evil path with the thought that they can always correct themselves later? So the question is saying that since we know that we can improve ourselves and that we're going to be improving ourselves forever, we have the chance to improve ourselves forever, then wouldn't someone be like, oh, okay, I'm going to go to the evil path now because I can fix myself later. I have forever. And the Spirit said, those who think that they do not really believe anything at all. So what they're saying right there is that if you think like that, then you're not really thinking at all. You're not really believing anything. You're just kind of making an excuse. Because if you knew that we would have forever to improve, but that you need to improve now, starting now, and if you improve now, then your suffering will end later and quicker. So those who think that way, they don't really believe it. They're just kind of saying that. And then they continue. The idea of eternal punishment no longer restrains them because their reason rejects it. Instead, it leads them to question everything. If one reasonable means were used to guide humans, there would be no such skeptics. During its corporeal life, an imperfect spirit may think as you have stated, but once released from matter, it may think very differently. It soon perceives that it has calculated badly, and so, to make up for it, it will carry an opposite sentiment into its new existence. Progress is accomplished thereby, which is why on earth there are those who are more advanced than others. Some have already had the experiences that others have not yet to go through. The later acquire such experiences little by little. It depends on each individual to hasten his or her own progress or to delay it infinitely. So they're saying that people may think like that, but they're going to realize their mistakes when they leave this corporeal existence and they're in the spirit world and they realize, wow, I shouldn't have made that, because now I have even more stuff to prove and to go through again and to correct. So they'll realize their mistakes eventually, and then hopefully they'll start the path of good and then start again where everyone else, where some people were at, and then we'll continue. And so the progress of each individual, it's up to yourself. No one can make you progress, and you can't digress, but no one can try and push you down, because you can keep doing better yourself. So it's all up to the individual person. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in, and he says, persons who find themselves in a dreadful situation desire to change it as quick as possible. Those who have convinced themselves that the tribulations of this life are the consequence of their own imperfections will seek to ensure a new existence that is less painful. This thought will draw them away from the path of evil much more readily than the thought of eternal fire, which they know to be pure nonsense. So here they're saying that we don't need to have this image of like hell, like they say, or an eternal fire that they're going to be punished forever if they don't do the right thing. We don't need that image, because just when we get to spirit world and see, wow, everything that I suffered from was because of myself and I can change that myself, that's enough for them to change and to move away from the path of evil, because if they want to have a less painful life, they have to make it less painful. So we don't need this image of hell and an eternal fire to suffer in. Question 196. Since spirits can only improve by undergoing the suffering and tribulations of corporeal existence, does it follow that material life may be seen as a type of severe filter through which the beings of the spirit world must pass in order to arrive at perfection? So the question is saying that if spirits only improve by going through these sufferings and these trials and having to overcome them on corporeal existences, can we see this as a type of filter that the spirits have to pass through to arrive to perfection? So you kind of have to go through these certain things to get to that perfection? And the spirits answered, yes, that is right. They improve during such trials by avoiding evil and practicing the good. However, it is only after many incarnations or successive purifications, and after a long or shorter lapse of time, that, according to their own effects, they reach the goal meant for them. So they're saying that, yeah, this is right, and because improvement happens by going through these trials, and when you're faced with something difficult, that you go through it and you're trying to be positive and practicing the good and you're avoiding evil. And it might take a while, it might take a lot of incarnations, it might take only 2 incarnations for you to pass a certain trial, but up to your own efforts, you will reach that goal. And then there's a second part to this question, and it says, does the body influence the spirit to improve it, or does the spirit influence the body? And the spirits answered, your spirit is everything. Your body is a garment that rots. That is all. So what they're saying is that your spirit, that's everything. That makes up who you are. The body is just the clothes that you're wearing. That's just the clothes that your spirit are wearing. And eventually it's going to die. These clothes are going to get old and they're going to be out of fashion. And then there'll be new ones. And that's it. So it's the spirit that influences us. Everything is about the spirit. Then Allan Kardec puts his own comment, and he says, We have a material image for the various degrees of soul purification in the juice of the vine. It contains the liquor called the spirit or alcohol, but it is weakened by the large quantity of foreign elements that alters its essence. It only reaches absolute purity after several distillations, each removing a portion of the impurities. The amblyx represents the body into which the soul must enter to purify itself. The foreign elements are like the perispirit, which is more and more purified as the spirit approaches perfection. So that's just saying again how the spirit is everything. The body is just something that we have to use to help learn, because in the spirit world we remember all of our mistakes. So how hard would it be if we remembered our mistakes, or if we did something really bad to someone and then we had to fix it? But if we knew what bad thing we did, it would be really hard. So the body and being on earth and being in this connection with other people, we need that to reach perfection. So it's just a tool that we use, but our spirit is everything. Our spirit's the important part. So that's the end of that section, and the section that we'll start off with next week is called The Fate of Children After Death. And we'll continue with that next week, but before we leave off today, I'd like to read our quote from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations by Linda Picone. For today's date, March 14th. Nature's beauty. The best remedy for those who are afraid, lonely, or unhappy is to go outside, somewhere where they can be quiet, alone with the heavens, nature, and God. Because only then does one feel that all is as it should be, and that God wishes to see people happy amidst the simple beauty of nature. Anne Frank. A sunny day, a light breeze, a temperature perfect for sitting outside without a jacket. Such days make us feel happy, at peace with the world, and grateful. But walking in the rain, making snow angels, or watching the wind whip the trees also can make us feel happy. Nature keeps us grounded in what's real. Winter balances summer, giving the land time to renew itself. Wind sends seeds flying to give birth to new plants in other places. If I find myself feeling grouchy, I will get up from my chair and take a quick walk. I will look for signs of nature's beauty that will cheer me up. I'm Bia. Thank you all for listening. This has been Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.